So let's start. So I'm going to share my experience, my story before when I was working with one of the team about observability. So it's something that that is from before I joined Thoughtworks. So I joined a new team, and it was a product-based company, and the whole team, when we joined, we all were completely new to that product. And that product was mainly an automated invoice system, which was built on a microservices architecture, which meant there were kind of quite a lot of different services and multiple moving parts, which meant like quite a lot of multiple parts to fail, right? So I was trying to learn about the product. I was super excited that I'm going to work on this very different kind of a product with my team. And I was really excited to see how I can see if there are any quality improvements that I can make from a tester's point of view. So as a tester or anyone on any role, on a team, when you join a team or a product or a company, like what is the first thing that you try to do? You kind of try to understand the product, right? So I was trying to do the same. I was trying to understand the product, and the way I was trying to do was because I'm a tester, I was trying to explore the product, and I was also trying to read some of the conference pages or documentation that was available, and I was also trying to talk to different people to learn more about the product. So I was trying to do that. And the more I was trying to understand the product, the more I was trying to learn about it, I was trying to feel that the product is super complex. And it was not just that. I've also noticed that there were kind of very frequent production issues. In fact, I would see a production issue every day. I mean, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any production issues, but on a day-to-day basis, it was a very surprising thing for me. And not just that, I would see people panicking and running around here and there to figure out what's happening and to answer the customer calls and all that stuff. And of course, I'm talking about those pre-pandemic times when we used to work in the offices. That was pretty surprising to me. And not just that, I would notice that the devs would try to pick up those incidents and try to figure out what's happening. And they would spend some days, sometimes some weeks on a given production incident. And because they couldn't figure out what's happening or they couldn't figure out any information, they would end up in marking the tickets as blocked. At this point, that really made me think, what's really happening here? What's exactly wrong here? And I kind of stopped thinking that product is complex as an excuse, because that was my excuse that, okay, yeah, product is complex. And interestingly, at the same time, I was trying to read a lot about, I got introduced to the term observability, which I was completely new to. And I was reading a lot about to understand what it is and without knowing when and where to use it. So I was not just reading about observability, but also trying out some trial version tools that kind of promised delivering observability. For example, I tried to use Honeycomb trial version to understand whatever the theory concepts I was trying to read, what exactly it's doing with the product. And not just Honeycomb, you can see that there are kind of quite a lot of different tools available, like maybe Splunk or Dynatrace or Kibana or whatnot, like Lightstep or anything. So I was doing that. And also, I was trying to continue exploring the product to understand more and see what gaps we have in terms of quality. And I've also noticed that the way the developers would try to debug those issues was by getting into each service and trying to open the logs into Notepad++. And by the time, because the issue was not with just one service, by the time they were trying to figure out where the issue is, they would end up with multiple Notepad++. And not just that, the only way to search through those logs was by manual search, or sometimes I would also see that by Control F, which was pretty challenging. So even though we kind of had some logs in place, some kind of instrumentation in place, some data that we could use to find the information about those production incidents, but we still couldn't because we kind of had some challenges. And like for example, those logs were not easily searchable. We had logs, but we couldn't easily search those logs. And it was too much context switching, because by the time we look at the logs from one service and then switching back to the other Notepad++ tab instance, whatever you call it, it was a lot of context switching while we were going through those logs to find out the information about the issue. And there was no visualization of the data. It's like just some kind of data available, but we had no kind of monitors or any kind of dashboards or any alerts in place. It was not just frustrating to the developers, but it was frustration to the whole team, because it was like not just that developers were frustrated that they couldn't fix those issues and they were marking as block, but it was frustrating to the business stakeholders because they don't have any answers like when those will be fixed, and at the end we would have angry customers, like customers would be unhappy. At this point, I kind of got an answer and I kind of understood that, oh, our product, like it has either very less visibility or kind of no visibility at all. So which is why the devs could not find enough information to fix those issues. So how can we build an observable system, or how can we have a system observable? So at this point, I would like to give an introduction to what is observability. If you try to Google about it, you'll find quite a lot of different definitions, but I kind of got this simple definition, and observability is sometimes referred to as OLI. Observability is a measure of how well an internal states of a system can be inferred from its external output. It means that you can answer any given question while you're trying to find out the information or debug the system by just looking at the output of the system without shipping any new code. And why do you do that? Like whenever the systems are down or whenever you kind of have production issues, you kind of ask questions, right? And you need to have answers as quickly as possible so that you can resolve these issues, right? And for the system to be able to answer those questions, to be able to help you, the system needs to be observable. So that it can explain what's happening inside, right? But how, like, yeah, we know we need to have an observable system, but how can we build an observable system? So one of the answer to it is by using data. So like now you might be thinking, what type of data or do we need to make a system observable? So we can make a system observable by having different types of data, and that data could be in any shape or form. Like it could be in the logs, in the form of logs, it could be traces or metrics or events or anything. So let's look each of these a little bit. So what is a log? Oh yeah, I'm not talking about that log. So a log, what is a log? Like I'm sure you all might be looking at logs on a day-to-day basis, right? Like you might be seeing logs. So a log is a simple, easy information that provides you more context, and it kind of have some kind of timestamp that will help you to understand when things are happening, right? And it's not about just having some log in place, but it is about having some structured logs so that they are easily searchable, and the way they can be easily searchable is by having those all logs centralized, right? So going back to my team's example, we had logs, but because they were not easily searchable by a simple query, or they were not searchable at one place, it made the team very difficult to debug any kind of issues, right? So this is where the quality of the log matters. So for example, imagine if you had this kind of a log in place, how helpful is it? Like, just having a timestamp, error, and read timed out, right? It's not helpful. So maybe if you add something more, like how can you trace it? What kind of request ID can you add? What information can you add? Like which user is the request coming from? Or maybe like which build or which commit is it coming from? Or it could be something like which service is it coming from? And what kind of message does it log? Or what kind of level is it? Is it on an error level? Is it on a debug level? Or is it on an info level? And of course, a timestamp. So it's about every team decides about how much information they would like to add that would be helpful for them in order to use those logs whenever they have to debug. this was logs. So let's look at metrics. What are metrics? Metrics is something like a simple number, right? It's a trending number or a value that gives some information about your system. Because it is a number, it sometimes kind of give you insights of some historical data, comparing historical data and the current state of the system, right? So using these metrics, we can also build some kind of alerts on top of it. And it's not just, because based on the system's behavior, we can trigger alert using those metrics. And metrics could be telling you different things, right? It could be, a system metric could be something like, for example, it could be something, how much memory has been used by a given process. Or an application metric would be something like, what is the error rate for our APIs, right? And a business metric could be something like, oh, how many users have logged in on a given time or on a given day, or it could be how many users have have signed up for a newsletter, right? Depending on your business context, you can have different type of business metrics, and these metrics could be used to capture the to get some insights into the system behavior from the historical and the current state of the system. Now let's look at traces. Traces is like, it's like giving you more context. It's like showing you the whole story of from the start till the end of what's happening with each request. It could be something like with, you can call it as an event or a request, and you can figure out more information through a trace. With these different type of data and these different type of visualizations, we can make a system a bit more observable. And again, as I said, it's not about having some data in place, but having that visually represented data so that you can use that different type of data to debug and to learn about the system. And it's not about just the system, but how our customers are engaging with our system. I like what Cindy says here. It's like, it's not just about logs, metrics, or traces, but about being data-driven during debugging and using the feedback to iterate on and improve the product. So it's not about just logging something and just instrumenting and just marking it as, okay, yeah, we are having some instrumentation in place, but being data-driven and using that as a feedback loop within our process. So while I'm talking about observability, I do want to talk about monitoring as well. And I'm not going to talk about monitoring versus observability, but monitoring and observability. Monitoring is more of like about known unknowns, and observability is more about unknown unknowns. And you can say with monitoring is like, you know what may go wrong, and using that data, you might try to like have some kind of dashboards or alerts in place, right? And you know what data you need, so that's why you kind of build that data. And yeah, as I said, based on that data, you kind of build some dashboards and set some automated alerts in place. But with observability, you don't know where things might go wrong. And you have no idea like what data might be useful at given time, and you don't know which data might be relevant while you're trying to debug. So it's all about quite a lot of unknown unknowns, and it kind of gives you an ability to explore more while you're trying to debug to find your answers. Monitoring tells you whether the system works, and it's like, you know, you kind of do checks of your systems, health check and everything, and it kind of tells you whether it works or doesn't work. But observability helps you in not just knowing the problem is happening, but knowing why it's happening and how you can go and fix it. Or at least, where can you go and try to figure out how you can fix it. Just as with DevOps, you cannot just say that by having some automated tools in place that you are following DevOps, right? It's more of a cultural and mindset shift. Similarly, with observability, it's not just that if you have some shiny tools in place, you cannot say that your systems are observable or you're doing observability. It's more of a cultural and mindset shift, because you have to think ahead and you have to think the way you try to build the features, which includes observability as a feature while you're trying to build those. So I've been talking about observability, but how does it help testers? I know we don't have any testers over here, but still, you might be working with the tester. So it helps for anyone who is testing. Like, again, like only tester is not testing, everyone is testing, right? So it helps it becomes easier to find more information around issues. So for example, wherever a tester or anyone we are trying to explore to figure out, when we are exploring, we kind of come across any kind of like issues or some unexpected behavior, right? So when we come across such issues, it helps if we have these kind of tools in place, and if we can access these, it helps to track down even more information to figure out where things are going wrong and what's happening. So for example, whenever a tester is trying to log, like, a bug report or something to get through, to reproduce all the steps and all that information, right? So if they cannot find enough information to track down what's happening, that means that there is some kind of gap, right, with what we have existing in terms of instrumentation, right? So the tester can, it's not just about using instrumentation, like using what we have, but tester can try to pinpoint, like, give some suggestion about where there's a gap between instrumentation, and they can help the team to improve that, right? And I'm sure quite a lot of devs here, you might like to have a bit more information around the issues, rather than just a tester coming to you and saying that, oh, something is broken, or something is not working, right? So by having observability in place, testers can make use of that information and add more details around, can give more information around the issues. For a tester or for anyone who is testing, it is kind of a tool for creative exploring and asking questions, right? So when you're performing exploratory testing, or when you're trying to test, you kind of explore, right? And you kind of ask questions. Why is this doing this? Or why is it doing that, right? So you can use this as a tool to find out what's happening under the hood during each request. So it's not about just exploring the UI, and blindly thinking about what's happening and why is this request not working, but having that ability to look under the hood and trying to use that information. And it's not just that. The more the tester or anyone, like, when they're trying to learn about the product, they can use the data under the hood, and they can try to figure out how the systems are working together. And they can use that information to, like, the more you learn, I mean, it's simple, right? The more you learn about the product, you can make more informed decisions about the product, right? And it's not just that, for example, with observability, you can find whenever there's some kind of a problem, it becomes easy to find where is the root cause and try to fix those issues, right? It's just very standard stuff with the observability. The cool stuff is whenever there is these kind of incidents are happening, and what is the feedback that you learn, and then you incorporate into your next cycle of your development, and prevent those kind of issues going to the production. So that is where this observability can be leveraged to improve the quality of the system. And as I said, the more you learn about the system, the more you can improve the quality of the system. I just want to show you this little mind map, which I kind of use whenever I'm trying to test a feature, especially if you look at that side, like where it says the cross-functional requirement and observability considerations, right? So I'm kind of very, as a tester, like I'm a very visual person, so I kind of want to plan whenever I'm testing a feature. So whenever you're trying to work with a tester, or whenever a developer is trying to implement these instrumentation in place, so we can think ahead while the feature is being developed and ask these questions like, okay, once this feature is being into production, how can we know if something goes wrong with this feature, or how can we observe this feature? I mean, these are just normal, as a example questions that I have there, but you can use this as a conversation, as a collaboration between the developer and a tester to improve the instrumentation that we have on a system. To summarize, I would say that by making systems observable, it helps in debugging, and it's about it can help anyone from navigating to the from the cause, through figuring out what's happening. It helps everyone on the team to debug, and it kind of gives the early feedback, right? If we have these kind of observable services in place, and while we are testing, or while we are trying to look through through playing around with the feature or testing or using that feature, it gives us the early feedback about if there's something wrong, or if it's not working, right? And we don't have to completely solely rely on UI. So, and observability is not just about knowing knowns of the system, and it also helps us about finding unknowns of the system. It's about using that data to figure out what you might have not thought about the system, and using that information to come up with if there are any kind of risks to the product, and trying to learn from them. Some of the key takeaways that I would like to share would be use observability as a tool for creative exploration. When you are trying to explore, don't just look from the UI or just from the APIs, but look for all the logs and all the events or the metrics that you have in place, and try to use that data to explore more about the system. And leverage observability to improve the quality of the system. It's about the more you learn, as I said, right? The more you learn about the system, you can try to improve the quality of the system. So you can make more informed decisions towards the quality of the system in terms of testing, right? And use the information as a feedback into continuous improvement. So whatever feedback you get, whenever there is a issue, how easy was it to fix, or what was lacking when you were fixing it. So don't just forget about it. Use that as a feedback to add to your next iteration of the dev cycle, so that you don't end up into the same situation for the next time. And use observability to learn about the system, okay? So it helps you learning about the system, not just from the user's perspective through the UI, but also from how the services are interacting with each other. What are the different services being involved? So you kind of you can learn about that. And influence the teams to think of new ways of testing. So imagine you have whenever you deploy a feature into the production, you have all your tests green, all your automated tests are looking green, and all your monitoring dashboards are looking all good and green, but still you kind of have some incidents or some customers calling in that some issues is going wrong, right? So it's not all about all the time automated testing. So you have to think about new ways of testing. So you kind of influence your team to think about observability and how you can add that. And when I say new ways of testing, it's start thinking about testing in production, kiosk testing, right? So you cannot test in production, or you cannot shift right if you don't shift left. So you have to start thinking about implementing observability by shifting further left, so that you can shift right. So yeah, to end, I would say observability is not just for SREs or devs or any specific role, but it's for QAs as well, because it's not as I said, it's not just for one specific role. It empowers the whole team. So we all should make use of what data we have and how to improve the observability of our system that we are working on. So yeah, thank you.